Hello, this is
Hello,
Dina
hello.
Hill, and I have my guest here, Linda Lattimore. And what I'd like to do is welcome all of you to Project Illumination, where we are dedicated to shining light and love into the world, in the workplace, and to rebuilding relationships in all situations, because we know right now people need more connection. So I've invited Linda to join me today and share with me so many of the things that she's done. Hello, Linda.
Hi, I'm always glad to get out and chat,
Yeah,
especially, like you say, because many of us are at home,
yeah,
either working or living or whatever. So it's nice to see a happy face.
yes. And Linda and I were talking just before I started this. We met, it was over 20 years ago in San Francisco at a women's conference. And we just kind of connected. I remember we walked and talked and had a
Yeah,
lot in common. And so we stayed in contact all these years,
all these
even though
years.
we,
And I think you had just released your book, or
yes,
you had just written your book. I don't
my
remember if it
first
was in the
book was
publication
out.
process, but you had just finished completing it.
Yeah, yes. In fact, that's why I was there. I was one of the speakers at that women's
Ah,
conference about my book.
yeah,
And my first book was about rebuilding relationships in
yep,
the
I remember
workplace.
that exactly.
So
Exactly.
it was a great time, and you and I've stayed in contact. And so this just seemed like a perfect topic when I know you've accomplished so much. Let me just tell the audience a little bit more about you, Linda, your professional
Sure.
background. You're a dedicated and passionate collaborator and visionary. Linda's also a highly regarded speaker, and she's the best-selling author of two books, Solutionaries, You Are the Answer, and Gratitude, Overcoming Loneliness in a Disconnected World. Linda's a seasoned lawyer working in the C-suite executive offices and working with business strategists, but she's very dedicated to helping people understand the importance of their unique gifts. And I know you're good at that, Linda. She's the founder of Solutionaries Academy, and she's also the founder of and executive director of the Women's Global Network. She's so accomplished that when I first was looking at all this, I thought there are so many different directions that we could go. But I really thought today, and I think it's an important topic, is to talk about connection and how we can go from loneliness to connection. So, Linda, what tell us why that you wrote a whole book about that and what kind of was your overarching passion to do all this work with people? And even though you're a lawyer, you are very, very connected to people and their gifts.
Yeah, these books are different, but there's a common thread throughout, I would say. So, and I firmly believe that all of us, we don't stop and think what we offer to the world in terms of our values and the things that are important to us and how they are really a reflection of our childhood and our life and all of our experiences. Um, and in my case, my dad was in the international business and we moved to Lima, Peru when I was 5. We were
Mm.
there till I was 12 and on to Mexico City. So I grew up at that time. Um, I mean, there's still a lot of poverty in Latin America, but Lima was not the cosmopolitan city that it is today. And as a very small child, I had very small children. I was in kindergarten coming up to me with their hands out. And I had no idea. Well, of course, I didn't speak Spanish when we first got there. And I had never experienced hunger. I'd never experienced anything like that. I wasn't really sure what these kids wanted. But, kids have a way of communicating, um, regardless, right? It left a big impression on me later on. And I don't think I knew it for many, many years, not till I was in my 40s. Did I really stop and think back on my life and realize that I was profoundly impacted by the lack of equity. So, there was me, my little white pinafore dress back in the late 50s, early 60s. And then there were these starving children that had no rooftop, no water, no food, no nothing. I mean, when you look at the completely different, and I later on, found that I wanted to be a social worker when I was in high school, and then my dad was really hot for me to go get a business degree and a law degree. Um, so he sent me down to Mrs. Miller, to learn about social work. And of course, I didn't want to be a social worker when I came home. I think they were in cahoots, right? And then I went on and got my finance just like Dad wanted, and law degrees and stuff. And then I was the only woman half the time, right? I was the only woman in the DA's office. I was the only one, well, not the DA's office, the U.S. Attorney's office. And then I was the only woman at the companies when I was general counsel of them. So it's sort of an extension of this thing that I saw as a kid. It was a lack of equity, for lack of a better word. I mean, there was no even playing field around me. And it became important to me to use my whatever I had. And at that point, I had more gifts and talents as a lawyer and as an executive than I had as a small child, to use that to help people.
Yeah.
And so the first book, you and I were just talking about, Solutionaries, was about teaching people how to create a social impact business. Like, how could they actually themselves create a business that would help other people? And then last year, I was super lonely. After all, I don't know about you, but I was stuck in the house during COVID with a dog.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have a meal with anyone else for 50 something weeks.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. And so, and then I moved back to San Diego. I had a daughter out on one of the military bases here. And so I could be part, it was shut down. The cities were shut down. And so I really, like many people who were experiencing loneliness during COVID, but I think experience and that lack of connection, like we're talking about. Um, I had to figure this out myself. I had to figure value, right? Because when you're not doing for others, most of the time you don't feel value. That's where you get your sense of value, right? And but none of us were doing that much for others. We were just focused on survival, right?
Right.
So I started writing a little list for myself every night, like just 3 things that I did that day to add value to the world. And it wasn't necessarily saving global poverty. I mean, I was here, it was maybe the guy down in the laundry room didn't have enough quarters for the dryer, and I had a handful. Or I don't know, maybe someone called me and they really needed help with a job application. Or I made myself write down 3 things every night where I added value to the world. And slowly but surely, I became to feel more valuable.
That's
Because
beautiful.
there's a yin and a yang to this, right?
Yes, and every little step, some people feel like, I think a lot of times people even feel like a victim. They feel like, I'm lonely, and my sister hasn't called, my friends don't call. And really, what you're describing is you initiating it, doing good things to individuals, reach out to people, share from your own heart and connect with people and add value, maybe not to the world, but to one person.
Yeah,
And
which is sort of what I call it, as there's a universal pot out
yeah,
there. In
yeah,
fact, originally I called this, well, I didn't know it was a book. I was writing myself my own little journal, right? And at that point, I wasn't thinking of a book, but I was calling it my value pot, which is a really stupid name or something. But it was the idea of the more you put in it, the more overflows back out to you, right? That's that idea. So a friend of mine from Austin called, I love Jan, and she says, told her what I was doing, and she says, "Oh my God, I have 12 friends that could use that book. I bet you could write it in 4 days."
wow,
Southern accent, and I was like, 4 days? You can write a book in 4 days, but I was like a trout. She set the hook, and I started writing, and ended
that's
up with
great.
52 different topics, everything from empathy to compassion to military families, and they're short. And then 10 ways that we could actually connect one-on-one with another human being
Yeah,
within that topic. Like, here's 10 ways you can show compassion. Here's 10 ways you can be empathetic, or teach your children to be empathetic, or your grandchildren. Here's, 10 ways that you can help a military family, or whatever the topics were. I just kept writing. I'd get up every day and I'd write one more, and I'd think of, 10 more ways. So I ended up
love
with
it.
520 ways that you can connect with another human being
Yes.
one-on-one.
Yeah. And why do you think that's important? Because I look at the world today, and I've traveled all over the world. You've traveled all over the world. And it's broadening to do that because that's when we see the equity as human beings. We're all equal souls, but the diversity and the discrepancy in wealth and comforts. Why is it so important that we need to connect with other people? And, you know, philosophically, it is important. What would you describe as why that's so needed now?
It's really interesting. Like you, I mean, you were called to write your book. And I know I've probably been called the same. Like this book came out, and now it's interesting to watch the evolution of where it's going and what's happening with it. Because
Mhm.
I was thinking of people kind of stuck like me. That
Mhm.
I was my audience.
Yes.
Right. And now I realize it's broader than that. What I didn't know was that at the time I was working on this, that our Surgeon General in the US was writing a paper, which was released 6 months after I started working on this book, saying that loneliness was a global pandemic, that 50% of the human beings on this planet are very isolated and lonely. And there's a number of reasons why. And it wasn't all about COVID, it started before COVID, right?
Mhm.
Um, and that the effect of loneliness was the same effect as smoking 14 cigarettes a day.
Wow.
So there's a mortality rate that's attached to
Wow.
this. A lot of it's due to, well, some of it's due to social media. Actually, quite a bit of it's due to social media. I
Wow.
mean, when you think about it, people feel like they're connecting if they do a thumbs up on
Yeah.
social media. It's not
Yeah.
connecting.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
and we tend to only post things that are happy pictures.
Mhm.
So people who are really feeling lonely, something like that, it's exacerbated because they feel like everyone has these amazing, wonderful lives and that they're lonely. Well, that's not true. That is like a 2-second snapshot of someone's life. It's not the
Yes.
entirety of it. So it exacerbates that feeling of isolation. And about the only way that I think you can really begin to step out of this funky place we have found ourselves is to go be one on one with another person.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the power of touch is so amazing, and it can be touch on a shoulder. It can be, you know, it doesn't, it can be getting your hair washed. I found that when I was so lonely, just not even going to the hairdresser where they would brush out my hair. That is a power of touch from
Yeah.
another person, right?
Yeah.
It's not about sex. It's not about any of that kind of affection. It's
Right.
truly, it's more than that.
Mhm.
And
I agree.
that's really, really powerful. That ended up being one of the topics that I even wrote about, thinking about ways that you,
Mhm.
particularly if you live alone and, or, and you're not in relationship and you're by yourself. What does that look like?
Yeah.
And it can be volunteering with small kids and just getting a hug from a small child. It can be having a pet,
Mhm. Yeah.
is the power of touch, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So so many people are in that space right now of feeling isolated.
Mhm.
Now, I mean, if you got 3 kids like my daughter does under the age of 5 at home, I'm sure she does it. She's wishing to have some isolation at some points
That's
in the
true.
day.
My
She's
daughter
touched too
too.
much.
They're busy.
They're
Um,
busy.
so there are people that are lonely at work. My book is about the dysfunction in the workplace and the conflict and how to rebuild those relationships. But people are lonely that are retired. People are lonely that I mean, it can be all different phases of life. Some of the
Absolutely.
loneliest people are at work. Um, and so I think your suggestions and your practical ways that people can reach out are so great and so needed. And so I hope everybody will get your book or at least take some ideas from this.
Yeah.
What would you, I always ask this question too of myself and anyone I'm talking to, what are the blocks that prevent people from taking action to some of the things that you're um, suggesting?
I kind of think, I mean, this is a mental health issue.
Mhm.
It's very much a mental health issue. And uh, it's hard to own that sometimes. It's hard to own. You don't want to be Debbie Downer. You don't want
Right.
to look like you're the person no one wants to be with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like all mental health situations, and really mental health just means it's not about being schizophrenic or something. Mental
No.
health just is really about, are you okay?
Yeah.
Really? Like we ask ourselves if we're physically okay, and
Hmm.
we know often we're not emotionally okay. I
Yeah.
mean, we may be sad, we may be lonely, we may be,
Yeah.
we're not always happy. And
Mhm.
that's okay, actually. And it's okay to have conversation with people about this. And you'd be surprised how many people are in the same space if you just open up and talk about it.
That, Linda, that is such a good point because what I talk about a lot and what you're describing is people want to put on this image that everything's okay. And that's a little bit about even Facebook is showing the world how happy I am, how lucky I am. And and our ego wants to present this certain face to the world. And yet that doesn't help us connect with one another. When we are putting on a face and we are, so strong and happy, but inside we're hurting or we're lonely
Yeah.
or isolated, that puts people apart from each other. And so what you're describing is taking off that mask, the desire to present this wonderful image of yourself and just be honest.
Yeah.
And instead of pushing people away, it brings people closer.
Oh, I think absolutely. Vulnerability always brings people closer and
Yes.
having a conversation. It was interesting for me. I don't, like I say, I started out writing this for me and then just turned into this another book, right? But the first night that it was going to be released, I went to the shopping mall. I wanted to get like a new shirt or something where there was going to be a little party. And so I walked in and there was a young Muslim woman who was my helper, helping me out at the store, right?
Well,
And I said, no, she showed me some purple outfit. And I was like, no, I don't think that will work for what I'm doing. I'm having a book party. My book. Oh, tell me about your book. I told her, and she gets both my hands and she
oh,
says, can you tell me where to get it? I'm so lonely.
oh,
So I went down two stores, and for some reason I walked into a furniture store. I had to stop myself and go, wait a minute, I'm looking for a blouse. I'm not looking for furniture. But you just sort of have this
yeah.
ADD, moment. And I walked in and I finally I said to the gal in the furniture store, I was asking her about something. I said, I gotta go. I don't know why I came in here. I'm looking for a blouse. And I said, I have my book thing is tonight. Oh, tell me about your book. Told her, she literally says, can I please write the name down? I'm so lonely. Two women, two stores,
Wow.
15 feet apart.
Wow.
It was the first time I really realized how many people, because that was right in my face and the book hadn't even been released. And
Wow.
it happens so much now. So many people will say that if I bring it up first, oh,
Yes.
the book is here.
Take down your mask, be vulnerable. So in a way, being vulnerable is actually courageous.
It is courageous.
It takes courage to be vulnerable. And I would like to see more and more people recognize that their strength, their authentic self doesn't need that mask, that pretense. And we would be able to connect with a lot more people. Sometimes I love your story. It reminds me of sometimes it can just be a moment that you spend with somebody that changes them. I had an experience right after my mother had died. I was in Spokane for 6 weeks. That's where my mother lived, which is across the state from me. And I got back and I hadn't really grieved because I was so busy in Spokane. And I was sitting on a park bench on a rainy day on it, mildly raining and not very many people were out. And I was looking at the water and I started to cry just to have that moment because I
Yeah.
missed my mom so much. And this lady unexpectedly walked up that was walking her dog and she saw me and I was embarrassed for a minute. And then I said, um, I just lost my mother. And this moment sitting here by the lake quietly just brought up all the feelings I'm having. And she just looked at me in the eyes so kindly and she said she had just lost her husband. And we both talked a little bit about grief and loss and get the look in each other's eyes. She then walked away with her dog. I never saw her again, but that moment of connection was so beautiful. And I thought, how often do we really look at people in the eyes, look directly in their eyes and connect with them from heart to heart? And we can't do that on social media. We can't do that watching movies alone. We need to be with people.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be, there is an energy exchange there,
Mhm,
you
mhm.
know. And also, it makes me think of why I named this book what I named it. I decided I hated gratitude journals,
Oh, yeah.
right? Because a gratitude journal, you're just writing down things that have been bequeathed upon you.
Mhm.
Like, and I don't know about yours, but because I've written in and out of them over the years, right? If I pick up one from 20 years ago, it says the same thing. I'm grateful for my dog. I'm grateful for the house. I'm grateful for my kids. I'm grateful for,
Yeah.
I don't know. And then the next night, I'm grateful for the dog. I'm grateful for the house. I'm grateful. It's like the same thing.
Yeah.
So as I thought about that, it wasn't about being constantly in receipt and being grateful.
Yeah.
Right. There is people are always saying, oh, you need to be grateful. Well, I mean, I think that's a humble thing to be. However, it was important to me that this was proactive.
Mhm.
So, in other words, you're going to have a great attitude if you do for other people, because
Mhm.
then it will come back to you tenfold.
Mhm.
So, it's
Mhm.
about shifting your attitude, whereas shifting by doing
Yes.
rather than just waiting to be bestowed on so you can be grateful.
Yes.
Right? You've got to like actually do something, which is
Right.
kind of what we're talking about, whether that's being vulnerable or actually saying, I have been a member for Rotary, and I'm going to actually go be in service and read books at the kids' um, school. I had to like the craziest experience. I don't have this mug in here right now, but I have a water, a water
Uh-huh.
thing, whatever I'm trying to say to drink water out of. And
Uh-huh.
a friend of mine who is a professional photographer took my kids from Canada were in, my kids from Japan. Anyway, he said, you're never going to get them all together. I have 5 grandkids, 7 and under. Let's get a picture out in the park so you can have a family, like a family portrait, which we've never had. I'd only ever seen them all together one other time before because
Wow.
everyone's in different places. And so anyway, this picture came out stunning. It's what he does for a living. So, but you got 10 people in five or cricket, like Jimmy Cricket's hopping up and down. I don't know how he did it, right? So I'm sitting in Rotary and the waitress comes over and says, oh, here's this mug for you. It's like a mug. Why are they giving me a special glass? And he'd had one of those glasses made and had the whole portrait inside of it. So,
Oh,
and I looked at him and I was like, he goes, I want your family to be with you at all times.
oh,
So, which was so kind, right? So then recently I was at a service thing. I didn't know anyone there. I was going to help donate. We're donating books to homeless children or something. And this woman comes up to me and she goes, why is Rachel Kiner on your mug? That's my daughter. I was like, because she's my daughter? I didn't know this woman from Adam. And turns out my daughter's married to a Navy doctor, and this was the commanding officer's wife on the base, and they had been friends.
oh my gosh.
So, because of a mug, we sent my daughter a picture, but it was another way to connect through
Mhm.
volunteering. And I think that volunteering to do things is a
Mhm.
huge way to connect with people who
Mhm.
are also looking to find connection.
Yes. Beautiful story.
I
I,
know.
I think every time we are out, every time we connect with people, we're opening opportunities, and it's like exponential. That's when synchronicity happens. We're trusting and giving to the world and trusting that things come back, because that's the way the world actually works. So on a different note, or maybe the opposite, is what we're seeing so much of in the world today. We see this demonstration of greed and having more, and the disparity between incomes and what people have. And like you were describing, evening the playing field. The greed or the desire to have power over other people is one of the hugest blocks from our whole world understanding. We're really one family of human beings. We're all equal, and which is what you started out with. And somehow each one of us can help rebuild these connections in the world, even with small steps. And it will benefit the world, but it comes back to us every time we do. And Linda, could talk to you for hours about this subject because it's so important
We're
and
so
what your
aligned on this.
yes, you have so many great ideas for people. Um, again, I started out by saying I hear people complaining that, they aren't getting enough attention from other people and they think they should do something. I think it's up to us, like you're describing, to do something and be the initiator, not just sitting and waiting, like you
Oh
said.
yeah, yeah. You have to be the well. Actually, Brene Brown has got an interesting book out right now called "Lead Them" or "Lead Let Them."
Oh, yes.
I'm reading, but the flip side is not just let them so your feelings aren't hurt.
Yeah,
Let them go off if they've hurt your feelings, but it's let them and then let me. Okay, let
that's,
them do what they're doing, but let me go do something too,
yes,
right?
that's
So
true.
that is that action of doing. I mean, I people over the years, if they've been grew up in a church might have heard about tithing and stuff, which is the idea of you putting money in and that you will get something out, right? So whether it's, and I don't necessarily, I'm not talking to this as a church, but this idea of having a universal pot, like you and I were talking about, where you're constantly putting in, you can't expect to be getting stuff out of the pot if you're not putting something into it,
Mhm.
period.
Exactly.
That's it. There
Yeah,
is no sit and wait
right.
and constantly be given stuff. You've got to go.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about I'm working hard, I'm getting paid a salary, although that is an exchange of value. I'm
Hmm.
talking about something more substantive, and that is what we used to call soft skills. And boy, I hate that word a lot. But it's more interpersonal skills. What are you
Hmm.
doing as a person, interpersonally with another person?
Hmm.
Are you communicating with them in a way they can hear you? Are you collaborating with them? These are all topics that I have put in here for people to think about. You know, are you being compassionate to this person? Are you being compassionate to yourself?
Wow.
Not just the person, but like, what are you putting in? Because face it, if you're compassionate to yourself, the whole world is happier when you're happy,
Yeah, that's true.
right? It's not just when mama's happy, dad's happy. The world is happier when you're happy.
Exactly. It's all interactive. We're
It's
all
all so
interconnected.
you got to go be putting stuff out. So I mean, I ask people, I get so tired of armchair quarterbacks on internet or anywhere who are just complaining about other people's actions. It just drives me batty. My first question is always, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing besides complaining?
Complaining.
Like, right? Like, what are you doing
Complaining and
yourself?
judging.
Complaining and judging. What are you doing? Just get off, get off your little duff and go do something. I don't even care what it is.
Yeah.
It's just taking a step.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
I also think we're in a really tough time right now. Yes, social media has done that, but our politics have made it really hard. And you and I talked a little bit about this yesterday. I was, I'm finding that people won't even have a cup of coffee with me if I'm of a different political affiliation than them. And the thing about that is, until we take the time to understand where the other person's coming from, not what we perceive, not what our guess is where they're coming from, but a real
Hmm.
conversation that says, explain to me why you feel this way.
Hmm.
And I'll explain to you why I feel that way without anger, without judgment, but actually a real conversation like,
Right.
what is that? Until we can get to the point where we're doing that and beginning to find some place in the middle,
Hmm.
we're going to be feeling isolated.
Hmm. Yeah, it comes down to what I'm sure you write about too, finding common goals, common values. And I actually put it, I'm thinking maybe I'll put it on again, that a chart that I made about Republicans and Democrats. And I, instead of saying what's different, I listed all the things that are same. We love our children.
Yeah.
We want good jobs. We care about the world. And I listed so many things that we have in common, but right now we are at such an extreme divided point that it's hard to have conversations.
The conversations are hard, but I remember years ago I was asked to come up and do a keynote and in oh my God, it was the women's suffragette up in New York, like Syracuse, I guess. Anyway,
Hmm.
I was asked to come up and talk. And so there were a lot of legislators there and stuff, women. They were all, and I said, you know what? Please don't go and send your team out to tell you what's important to your constituents and come back with a grid. Please start knocking on doors
Yeah.
and you talk to them and say, there's only one question to ask. What's important to you?
Hmm.
What's important to you?
Hmm.
And so that you can really understand. And so I find now that if I go in and recently I did a talk at a lunch about actually about gratitude. They wanted for me to come talk to, they had 50 women there and they wanted to talk about connection. So instead of asking the person next to you, what's your name and where do you work, which don't require much, I had every woman there ask the person next to him, what's important to you? Because what's important to you is someone has to be vulnerable to tell you what's important to them.
Hmm.
And it's something that you'll listen to and you'll think about.
Hmm.
It's a fascinating question to ask your friends, to sit
Hmm.
down with strangers
Hmm.
and ask them, because you're going to finally connect in a much deeper way than I work at Coldwell Banker and my name is this and I'm the regional manager.
Yes.
That tells you nothing.
Yeah.
I'm not in the market for
Exactly.
a house right now. But if I say what's important to you, we may find common things. It's important to me to work at the equine therapy organization that supports, disabled children and vets. Wow, my husband is a vet.
Hmm.
That whole conversation just took a different turn than I work at
Right.
the real estate company.
Cool. And people do find a lot in common. I do a similar workshop. I have people put them randomly together, and I have them each little group of two has to find five things they have in common that they didn't know. And it's amazing that
It's
they
amazing.
discover how many things they think that they share in common. And then we share it around the room, and everybody's laughing. And there's so much that we don't know about people that actually synchronistically we are connected and we don't even know it. We might even be working with them side by side and not know some of these things.
And what
So,
would happen if we actually made that part of our day-to-day interactions, uh, just with our friends, when
mhm,
we had a drink with someone, when we went to, I don't know, Rotary or church, or what would happen if we started outside of a workshop or a lunch speech? What would
mhm,
happen where it's programmed?
mhm.
What would happen if we just
If
made
we
that our
wanted-
question every day?
that's my nature. I have a lot of friends and even strangers, I like to know about them.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know about people, and I find great joy from that. And I discovered that instead of feeling like, boy, I sure am, it's just kind of my nature. But I discovered that people really like to be listened to, and
Yes.
the more you ask, the happier they are. So I think that on that note of happiness and reaching out, I'm going to end this. But Linda, tell people, and I'll put it also in the notes, but tell people how they can get a hold of you and or for coaching or speaking engagements or where they can find your books. And then I'll also put it in the notes.
Yeah, well, both the books, like I said, here's Gratitude, here's Solutionaries for any, well, helps to do the front for anyone that's watching. Can be found on Amazon. So that's easy enough. And they can
Yeah.
be found under my name or under Gratitude or Solutionaries. So Solutionaries, you are the answer, or Gratitude, overcoming loneliness in a disconnected world. These are up on Amazon. And then I always tell people they are welcome to write me at my email, linda@lindalattimore.com, which is pretty simple. Yeah, if there's any way I can help, I run writing institutes. Everyone seems to want to tell their story these days.
Mhm.
And so I do a lot of that in addition to my legal work. But yeah, that's it. I'm easy to find.
That's great. Well, I'll put that in the notes. And Linda, thanks so much for
Thank
taking the
you, Dan.
time.
It's so great to still have a 25-year friend off
I
of
know. I,
off of a
I,
women's workshop, all those years ago.
we connected.
We connected. We sure did. And we stayed connected.
Yeah.
We made the effort to stay connected.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye.